Hey everyone, welcome back to Shop Life. I just finished up doing a 330 brake upgrade on the wagon behind me. This is my wagon. It has a 330 swap. It's a 325i wagon. So we put the 330 brakes on it, and if you have an E46 or any car of this era, by now your brake lines are probably all shot. You might not see it from just directly looking at them, but if you start looking very closely, you'll see a bunch of dry rot happening around those rubber brake lines. So it's a good idea to replace the brake lines either with the OEM ones, or you can go with stainless steel lines. So ECS Tuning makes these exact fit stainless steel lines. I've used them before on plenty of customer cars, and they do fit perfect without any issues. I've never seen anything really go bad with them. The fitment's perfect, they fit in the grommets and everything. So I highly recommend getting some stainless steel lines. It does improve the brake pedal feel, and while you're at it, you can bleed out all of the old brake fluid and replace it all with new fluid. So if you are going to buy these lines or any other parts from ECS Tuning, make sure you use the link down below. It does help me out a little bit, and that helps me make these kind of videos for you guys. So make sure you use that. All the stuff I use today, you can pretty much find on ECS Tuning, including this brake bleeder. So this is made by Schwaben tools, and it makes the process a whole lot easier whether you're bleeding brakes or bleeding your clutch, depending on what kind of car you have. And they make all kinds of adapters so you can use it on your European vehicles and even your American vehicles. So this helps out a lot. Obviously you don't need to have this, but it does make it easier to bleed the brakes. And for brake fluid, you need some .4 fluid. I personally recommend using this Pentosin Super .4. Works out amazing. And besides that, as far as tools, you're gonna need an 11mm wrench, 9mm, and a 14mm. You can get the flare nut wrenches as well for the bleeder screws and brake lines. It does make it a little bit easier, but you can just use normal ones as well. And you just need a normal socket set, and we should be good to go. Let's get started. So we're going to start out with the front. The process is the same for each side. So what you do on the front right is going to be pretty much the same on the front left, and rear right, same on rear left. So I'm just going to show one on each side, and I will show when I'm bleeding the brakes as well. So here is the factory line. I've already pulled out this rubber grommet from the bracket that's on the strut itself. So you just pull that straight out. Once you have that out, now you can see the whole brake line. There's an 11mm brake line fitting that goes up here. And then there's a 14mm, and then you have to use a 14mm wrench to pull it off of the caliper itself. And you want to make sure that your brake fluid reservoir does not go empty, because if it does go empty, then you're going to have a little bit harder of a time to bleed all the brakes out, since you will have to use some kind of software to bleed the ABS system as well. We're going to start by removing this 11mm fitting, and what that will do is it's going to start pouring out brake fluid from right here. It shouldn't be a big stream, but it will keep dripping. And while you're at it, you're going to start removing this 14mm fitting from the caliper itself, because you do have to thread this one on first with the new line before you can hook it up to the top. And you're going to be sure not to get any of the brake fluid on any painted surfaces, because that will remove the paint. And also have a drain pan or something to catch the fluid. Now we can use a 14mm wrench to release it from the caliper. Now get your new line and thread it into the caliper first. Once it's nice and tight, then we can hook it back up to this fitting. And tighten this one up as well. Now use some brake cleaner and clean off all of the fluid. Alright, now we're going to secure the brake line into the grommet. And that just pushes right in. Now you can move the line in and out of the grommet to make it fit properly. Alright, so before we bleed the brakes, what we're going to do is we're going to replace all of the lines. So like I said, what you do on the front is the same on the other side. Now let's do the back. The back is a little bit different, but the process is for the most part the same. Alright, so now we're on the rear passenger side. Before we start removing any of the brake lines, we want to remove the bracket that holds the brake line in place. So you want to use some kind of flathead, and you want to pry off this clip. Now with the clip out of the way, you can pull the brake line out. So what you have to do is you have to push the brake line towards the caliper and then pull it out. Alright, now the process is pretty much the same as the front. Remove this 11mm fitting first, and then the 14mm from the caliper. Alright, so the rear brake lines, the main difference is they're a little bit longer, and then they have this fitting right here. So instead of a grommet, you're going to have this metal fitting. So same process as before though. Screw it into the caliper first. Alright, once everything is nice and tight, then you can put this back on. Now do the same thing on the other side, front and rear, and then I'll get back to you guys with how to bleed the brakes. Alright, so now that all the stainless steel lines are fitted, what you want to do is you want to empty out as much of the brake fluid out of the reservoir as you can, using like a turkey baster or something. Once you've done that, then we're going to put all the new fluid in. We're just going to fill it up. Since we're using the pressure bleeder, it's going to actually keep constantly feeding fluid back into the reservoir as it empties. If you're not doing that and you're using the two-person method, then you want to keep an eye on the reservoir and make sure it stays topped up. And for the two-person method, what you would have to do is you would have to have someone inside the car pumping the brakes. So what you would, pretty much how it works is one person keeps pumping the brakes until the brakes get really hard, so probably about 4 to 5 times, full pumps, and then just have them keep it pushed all the way in, and the other person would be at the bleeder screw, and you loosen the bleeder, the fluid will rush out, you tighten it back up, tell them to pump it again, but you gotta make sure that as long as that bleeder screw is loosened or opened up at all, the pressure has to be applied on that pedal. If it's not applied, then you're gonna have air come in. So if you're more of a visual person, I do have a video explaining that two-person method. It'll be linked down below. But anyways, we're going to be doing it with the power bleeder. Alright, so get it up to about 13 to 15 psi if you're using the pressure bleeder, and we can start bleeding. Alright, so you want to start at the very far corner from the DSC unit. So that's going to be, for left-hand drive vehicle, it's going to be the passenger rear. So we're going to start over here. It is going to be a 9mm bleeder screw. So just get a wrench, get your bleeder bottle, or you could use any kind of bottle that just has some kind of hose on it. That way it will squirt all the fluid into it. Then you want to crack the bleeder screw about 1/4 of a turn. And you'll see the fluid start coming out with the air. And you should see the fluid change color once all the dirty fluid is out. Alright, so we've got all the clean fluid coming out now and no more air. You can tighten the bleeder screw back up. Take the hose off. Now we're at the driver rear. Double check the pressure, make sure the pressure is still good on the power bleeder. And if you're doing the two-man method, just make sure that the fluid level on the reservoir is still topped up. And you want to make sure that that reservoir is closed if you are doing the two-person method. So you see all that air coming out. Alright, the fluid's changed color and no more air. Close the bleeder screw back up. Now front passenger. No more air, fluid has changed color. On to the next one. Alright, the final one, the front driver. Alright, fluid's changed color and no more air. Now we're going to release the pressure from the bleeder. Once that's done, then we can remove the whole cap. Alright, now once all that's done, if you use the pressure bleeder, once you unscrew it, the reservoir is probably filled all the way to the top. Just take some of that fluid out with the turkey baster or whatever method you choose. Put the top back on, make sure everything's nice and clean. And then you want to just pump the brakes a few times, check the fluid level again, make sure it's around the max area, and then just take it for a spin, make sure all the brakes are good, and then that's it for this DIY. Make sure if you are going to buy these stainless steel lines from ECS Tuning, use a link down below. Same with the pressure bleeder or any other tools that you might need. Anyways, thanks for watching. Make sure you leave a comment down below. And if you have any questions or any suggestions, feel free to message me on Instagram at ShopLifeTV. Thanks.